Welcome to Rauta's discography slash opinion slash feature video. Today I'm talking about a little bit of a band known as Cannibal Corpse. As some of you know, at least those who have been watching our videos for some time, these videos are all about going through their discography and also a little bit of my personal views and opinions about the band during all those years, and as well as some more or less personal experiences, to put it this way, whether it's seeing the band live or having an interview or whatever personal impact. Now I try to keep this a little bit shorter than previous videos because, as you probably know me, I just, kind of lose it, things get out of hand and suddenly it's 40 minutes I'm talking. So, by now I hope everybody have heard the latest album, Red Before Black. Now this is a little bit of unique title for the band, but it's really genius title. It's not so, how to put it, straightforward and so violent title as many of their previous ones, but let's get to those in a bit. The thing is that if you haven't figured it out yet, if you haven't read any interviews yet about Cannibal Corpse and the latest album, it means obviously Red, the blood before death. Simple as that, so genius, but not so straightforward title. And the reason why I want to talk a little bit of Cannibal Corpse and their discography is the thing that Red Before Black is definitely one of my favorite albums this year. When I'm gonna feature the top 5 or top 10 albums or whatever later on this year, it will be on that list, most likely anyway. Who knows what will happen? We have about a month or so to go. But that's so much about the top lists. Red Before Black, I never got the physical copy, so meanwhile I'm still waiting for that miracle to happen. There won't be a review of the CD. Let me just convince you, it's one of the best Cannibal Corpse albums ever, and I totally mean it. And to underline this fact, make sure that I wasn't talking right out of my poop hole, I basically did what I had to do. Go through the whole discography from the first album, Eden Back to Life, to the very latest album. That's it. It took me a little bit of time because most of my listening time I just listen to the review albums, promos and whatnot. So when you have like 15 albums or so in the discography, it's not so easy to listen to them in a couple of days. But let's begin from the very beginning. So 1988, death metal wasn't as big as it's nowadays, and there were only a handful of bands which were basically, making their way, creating this whole, base of death metal was meant to be. Bands like that, Death, Morbid Angel, of course Cannibal Corpse, Obituary, some English bands like Bloodthirst and all that stuff, they were, kind of the founding fathers. They didn't know it back then, but they were aware. And sure, there were bands like Possessed and all that stuff that kind of ignited flame, but the actual death metal was, basically in the baby phase, still in the mid 80s and even late 80s. Anyway, Cannibal Corpse, 1988. Barely a demo band, but soon they progressed to create their first album, Eden Back to Life. This album, I must say that there was so many years since I've been listening to early Cannibal Corpse albums that I didn't basically have any other idea how they would sound in my head except the vague recollection. I gotta say, I never thought it was that trash album that nowadays it feels in my ears. It actually reminds me of quite a bit of, the Beneath the Remains and Arise era of Sepultura. Kind of trashy riffs and not pure death metal, what was happening later on. It kind of sounds nice to this day, even though the production is, of course, not so well polished as the later on albums. but it is somewhat nostalgic. So if you haven't heard it like lately, I totally urge you to do so. I'm a little bit of adjusting the screen here so I can basically just, see the album list. Anyway, so soon after Even Back to Life was 1990 album, there was a couple of albums that came right after it, like a year later and a year later. And these were obviously Butchered at Birth and Tomb of the Mutilated, 1991 and 1992. These albums, in my opinion, didn't evolve much, but that they did the necessary steps. So, Butchered at Birth, as brutal as it is, from the very cover to the lyrics and the track lists, it kind of shows you a progress death metal album. Now more clearly death metal than these kind of death thrash vibes. Technicality, maybe a little bit forward, but not that much. And the same happened, in my opinion, Tomb of the Mutilated. By this time, Chris Barnes was already, famous for his, voice and, that stuff, being one of the voices of death metal. And gotta give to him that there's nothing to complain, really. He did a good job, even though his kind of pig squealish voice isn't exactly that good. But we have to remember, this was already almost 30 years ago. And back then, these kind of rules of how death metal vocalists should, sound like, they were not written in stone. The thing is, with strong vocalists, they may be charismatic even, talented musicians with a view, about the lyrics and the technicality of the songs, how the riffs are created and the songs are composed. They were setting their name in stone and they were soon to become big. No wonder that they are still one of the most commercially successful death metal bands and probably still are number one, at least they were. Now, then came the EP, which I don't usually list EPs here, but this one I must mention. Then came the EP called Hammer Smashed Face. And the thing is that there's one funny thing which I must mention right before I forget. Even though I'm not native English speaker, I know the difference that when you have two words with a dash and one without. Hammer Smashed Face, like hammer. Let me show you. Hammer smashed face. Or hammer smashed face. Oh, there's a hammer smashed face. See, a noun versus like verb, like smashing face. This is not so complicated, but when you think of albums like Worm Infested, it changes. Or Christ raping black metal versus Christ raping black metal. See, there's a difference. Cannibal Corpse never made it to have this dash piece with words, but nevertheless, it's funny. Anyway, Hammer Smashed Face EP totally nailed it. It's one of the hit songs of the band, totally killer riff right from the beginning. Well, not maybe right from the beginning, but you know what I mean. And then also the great Possessed cover. Just awesome EP in the sense of the whole discography. That should not be missed if you are a death metal fan. Now, then came The Bleeding, which was yet again a clear continuation to the previous albums. I don't think it is a big step between Butchered at Birth, Tomb of the Mutilated, and The Bleeding. They are just, in my ears now that I've been listening them all, and they're kind of glued together. It's not like I could give like a few spins each. No. So nowadays, I think they're kind of like brothers that just kept coming one after another. And so they are not huge steps between these albums, but they are clearly made from the very same band, and the progress is real slow. Now, while either didn't change much, little bit, but not that much. And I think the reason is that basically the lineup, since it was basically the same, all the way except that now we got this new vocalist, George Corpse Grinder Fisher, stepping in. I think that was the biggest impact on the album. Now, I don't think his voice is that good versus the later ones on this album, but he was clearly more than able to fill Mr. Barnes' shoes as a new Cannibal Corpse vocalist. I don't know how it was, taken at the time, how people reacted. Really don't have the time to do the background check, and it doesn't matter because this is about my opinion. But like it always is, people are always divided. Some people are like, boo, go back home, we want Barnes back. And some are like, yeah, better let him go, he was already smoking too much weed. We need this guy with this thick neck and all that stuff. But as an album, I don't think Wild is that, big thing compared to the others. Now, Gallery Suicide came 1998, and that was also the first time I saw Cannibal Corpse live. Back then, I was like some 23 years old or whatever, and I was so wasted I can barely even remember seeing the whole gig. The thing is that we were young, and there was this place called Lepakko in Helsinki, which was, kind of metal cave. A venue of sorts, yes, but also the kind of venue where to go to see these kind of extreme bands. Black metal, death metal, you name it. But anyway, we were so wasted that I just barely remember. There was Dark Funeral, Cannibal Corpse, and Infernal Majesty maybe. But that's pretty much it. I just remember seeing the show and it was brutal, and that's it. Blackout. Maybe not the type of way to spending your senior gigs, but anyway. That was nevertheless my first experience with the band going live. Now, Gallery Suicide is, in my opinion, a little bit of if not setback, but it's not that good an album. Some might disagree, but in my opinion, it was one of those albums which I kind of got bored with the band, in the sense of I didn't fall in love with the band. Cannibal Corpse had been always like, yeah, this is pretty okay, this is brutal and stuff, but nope. Later on, it was too late, basically, for me, because the train had already gone for me. So from that on, I didn't regularly, come back to Cannibal Corpse to see it, listen to their albums, but just something here and there. And that was maybe a mistake, because when Bloodthirst came in 1999, so only like a year later, that nowadays sounds in my ears like one of their best albums, actually. When I was mentioning to my friends on Facebook that I'm going through Cannibal Corpse discography, one of my friends said that it's one of his favorite albums, or the favorite album. And I was like, yeah, maybe so, but I don't know, people have different views and all that. But I don't know what exactly is the factor that kind of makes it a little bit notch up from the previous albums. But now that I gave the whole discography a go, I guess he was right. Bloodthirst is a little bit better than some of those previous albums. And so, if I just had to pick one album from 1990s Cannibal Corpse, that would be my bet. But like I said, if you're a fan, you already know this. Anyway, then there was a live album stuff and EPs and blah blah blah. So lots of these, releases between the studio albums. But Gore Obsessed came like 3 years later. And that and The Red Spawn, which came 2004. Those were really boring ones, in my opinion, now that I had been going through like the half of discography. And I was like, is this just me getting bored with the band, or is it actually so that these albums are actually boring? I basically listened to back those albums and like, man, this is so much boring than the previous ones. Is it just, you know, me getting, I don't know, fed up? Then Wretched Spawn, I'm just like, oh man, it's kind of like I'm feeling like let down. Like at first I was like enthusiastic going through these albums after so many years, and now that I'm like, oh man, this surely sounds like Cannibal Corpse, but the songs are just boring. But this all changed when Kill 2006 came out, and that totally blew my mind. Just from the very beginning with songs like Make Them Suffer, just like boom, and suddenly I'm like, whoa, it's not only the songs though, it's also the production. And it seems like Fisher, as the vocalist, have already also progressed, or you know, throughout these albums, which is of course not miracle. You know, obviously he learned to how to use his voice more violent way, more brutal way, and you know, express himself in you know, kind of different ways. But also I think something in the lineup was stirring up. I don't know. But Kill is so much more better. Not only, you know, Wretched Spawn and Gore Obsessed, yet another name without the dash, you know. Anyway, Kill is definitely one of my favorites. It could be even the favorite Cannibal Corpse album. I don't know, but that is still kind of ringing in my head in a positive way. Even though it's not so many days that I kind of listen to it, maybe a week or so. Anyway, when you know an album kind of leaves its mark in your head, you know there is actually something really special about it. And Kill definitely has it. Even the name, Kill. Awesome and brutal. So, Evisceration Plague 2009. Well, after this wonderful Kill album, obviously couldn't reach that level, obvious, but anyway, but still way better than Gore Obsessed and the Wretched Spawn in my opinion. Definitely going into this kind of a turbo phase, or like my friend called something like Super Corpse. I don't know, but basically he meant that, I think it started with Kill in his opinion, I'm not sure, but anyway, he said that with him that kind of started the new phase, you know, like gear up and have this kind of a Super Corpse in a way, you know, not just, you know, the songs, but production, just everything went to a new level, so to speak, which is, by the way, a little bit odd. The band had been already going like 20 years, and suddenly they kind of step up and go to their new level and make even more brutal death metal. Now, the funny thing is that when I was listening to Cannibal Corpse, like when I started this discography, I mean, I kind of had the impression that it was one of the most brutal band, one of the most fastest, most technical bands in terms of death metal and so forth. And now that I kind of listened to the albums, I was kind of like surprised, not so much disappointed, but surprised about how many mid-tempo or even slow parts there are. And of course, I'm talking about in terms of death metal. As technical death metal, especially like bands like Origin and Oxfire and all that stuff. And you know, when I'm listening to those and I just, you know, get blown away by the kind of instrument pornography, you know, like, you know, when the drums are just filled with details and the riffs are and I'm like, man, exhausting but so enjoyable. And compared to those, Cannibal Corpse also almost seems like, you know, laid back. It's a weird term to use for, you know, black death metal band, but you know, this kind of a laid back feeling is something that I kind of feel. But then again, it isn't a bad thing. There are many good mid-tempo and slow-tempo death metal bands, so it doesn't mean anything. It's like sloppy or anything like that. But I had totally different recollection in my mind. But anyway, the point is, these albums still work very well, and I kind of understand what my friend means with this Super Corpse or Turbo Corpse or whatever, turbocharged corpse. Now, with after Evisceration Plague came Torture, and by this time I had already seen the Cannibal Corpse, I think, Uh, 3 times, if I'm not mistaken. Uh, I once saw it like early 2000 something. I don't remember exactly which year it is, but if I should guess, something like 2002, 2005, somewhere along those lines. And then they were playing in a also in a club, but this time in a different city. And I still remember that while I was kind of enjoying their gig, I didn't, get kind of hooked in. It is one of those bands I kind of enjoy seeing live because they are so energetic and they play well. But since I've never been a big fan of the band per se, it kind of left me like, yeah, this is pretty nice. Let's have a pint or two of beers and watch the band on stage. But by album Torture 2012, I think it around that time when I saw it for the like third time, or maybe fourth. I'm not sure. My friend actually mentioned that it was something like 2007 or 2008 or 2006, something along those lines. When I saw them, Wacken open air in Germany. Funnily enough, I don't have recollections except like a vague feeling that maybe I was there drunk. Anyway, I don't count it as such because I don't remember. But when I saw them in Tuska, be it this third or fourth time, and on outdoor stage, and the funny thing which I now remember is that George Copscan Fisher had this World of Warcraft tattoo here. I don't actually remember which one, but doesn't matter. But anyway, elbow, and so it must have been, something like 2010 maybe. I don't know. Anyway, they were really good on stage, even open air and all that stuff. And while I still wasn't, a big fan of the band, yet again I was enjoying the seeing the band live because they clearly have been this, well-performing death metal band. And also, their latest albums have been so much better. And now, the funny anecdote about Cannibal Corpse, which I never, by the way, got to interview. Who knows, maybe what happens in the future, is that, during the World of Warcraft years, I played it as well. I remember seeing this outdoor festival interview with George Corpse Fisher, that he was talking about, not about death metal, not about Cannibal Corpse, but how he plays World of Warcraft and how many characters he has in that game and how he hates the Alliance player, or Alliance versus Horde. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can Google it up or just forget about it. But the thing is, it was kind of hilarious having this brutal death metal guy talking about massively multiplayer online role-playing game, and then also taking a tattoo with the Horde logo on his elbow. Really cool dedication about the computer game. Really funny stuff. Also, you can pretty much Google it up on YouTube. Google it up on YouTube, or just use YouTube search. So anyway, that was kind of a funny moment, and I remember seeing the Tuska show. Because I was with a friend who also was still is probably playing World of Warcraft, and she was so enthusiastic about this Horde logo, and we were kind of like having a fun time about this very thing. Anyway, whether you like World of Warcraft or not, it's a hilarious interview. You should check it out. So after Torture, Skeletal Domain came out like 3 years ago, 2014, and while it's basic good Cannibal Corpse, it's not one of my favorite albums. It kind of lacks these hugely hooking, impactful songs that knock the teeth out of your mouth and make your head spin and all that stuff. Surely pretty good. Production wise, all these late albums since Kill, and starting with that, being really good, but it's lacking something. And once again, I was thinking that maybe I'm just kinda getting too much Cannibal Corpse in too little time, and that's the thing. Then I switched again to Red Before Black, which kinda started all this discography stuff, and whoa, once again I was blown away because like I said, it's one of the best albums this year. Definitely one of the best death metal albums this year. And I pretty much can guarantee it's my top 3 death metal albums. There are a couple of albums which are, you know, fighting for the #1 spot, but nevertheless, real killer album, and I hope to make a proper review with the physical format which I can show to you. But anyway, it's already on Spotify and other streaming services most likely, so you can just, you know, check it out if you haven't checked out so far. But Red Before Black, totally killer album, which kind of proves that after 30 years, or almost 30 years, the band is still in killer shape. These guys are 50 something now, and even though the drummer is, you know, suffering from back pains and poorly executed drumming technique, that's what he said, not my words, they're still, you know, playing so awesome, you know, so tight, so technical, even if not the original / arch bar / whatever bands that have this extra technicality. But anyway, still making killer albums with killer production, totally awesome vocals. It's just, you know, one of these hats off moments, so to speak. So, to conclude all this, is that there's no wonder why Cannibal Corpse is one of the best death metal bands of all time. During their 29 years of existence, they have not failed a single time. Sure, Gore Obsessed and the Wretched Spawn could be just, you know, some Cannibal Corpse copycat bands albums, but they are not bad albums. They are quite okay. They are just not reaching the high level of what we are used to with Cannibal Corpse. So even if I was a little bit of, you know, questioning the quality of Cannibal Corpse, I was like basically like, should I just go with my instinct and forget about the band, or should I just listen to it all now that I've been, you know, listening to the new album and been so much enthusiastic about it? Should I just, you know, go for it? And, you know, there are these killer tracks like I Come Blood and She Was Asking For It and Hammersmith Face, and, you know, it's no wonder why this band is so popular. And you have this kind of a band from these, you know, the first albums which were banned in like Germany and probably Australia or whatever. So it's not no wonder that this band got this reputation of being a real killer, because they actually are so brutal on stage. They perform well, they have well executed albums and live shows and all that stuff. Corpse Grinder is charismatic persona, in my opinion. If you you know, watch his interviews and you just take a look at him, he's fun to listen to, and the vocals are all about murder, violence, killing, beating, dying, getting hurt, all that stuff. It's so violent, but at the same time it's kind of hilarious because it's not too serious. And if you don't know, but you probably do if you're a fan, it's not like these stories are real stories. They might be, because there are a lot of death metal bands and crime bands which are, you know, storytelling. The stories of like real serial killers and murderers and whatnot. But Cannibal Corpse has been always about, you know, having these stories, but not in too serious ways. So what can I say? A great band that totally deserves all the good attention they have gotten so far, and I totally hope they are getting more fans, more people check out their music with the new track, and also people should go totally see them live. If I have seen them 3 times without actually not having those albums in my shelf, and I still enjoy the show, I don't see any reason why you couldn't do the same. So, Cannibal Corpse, one of the best death metal bands of all time, and probably will be. So, check out Red Before Black, and then when you get hooked, go back to the discography and do the same as I did and get back to this video. Thank you for watching this way too long 30 minutes video. Hope you enjoyed though, and should you have any comments about Cannibal Corpse or funny stories to tell, please share them and let's get back to it. Thank you and goodbye.